Hey, welcome in.
Welcome to the Arrowhead Addict podcast.
We are here coming to you live.
The Kansas City Chiefs are going to the Super Bowl. You only win a Super Bowl 2 times every 5 years, right?
Oh!
The warm-up act is over. Let's bring in Melissa Etheridge, massive Chiefs fan. Melissa,
Super Bowl champion, 2-time Pro Bowler, and Trent Green. Trent Green, how you doing?
Hey, what's going on, guys?
and he picked it up! He picked it up! He's gonna score! And we'll see you next week. But until then, as always, go Chiefs.
Because your Chris is on my list. When I turn out the lights. The list we're talking about is the did not report list. And the Chris we're talking about is Chris Jones. Welcome to the Arrowhead Addict podcast. My name is Matt Connor. Sitting across from the digital me is my pal Patrick Allen, who you all know from the Thursday show. There's a lot going on today. It's roster cuts day. But despite all of the moves, we have 2 trades. We have dozens of players cut. And yet the one thing, the cloud hanging overhead of the defending champions, is the fact that Chris Jones still has not shown up to Kansas City. There's a lot to talk about today. But first of all, how are you, Patrick?
Well, first, I just want to apologize to anybody who tuned into the YouTube version of this to see the beautiful face of Sterling Holmes. I know it must be rather shocking and perhaps upsetting for some of you to turn in and not see Sterling and see my ugly mug. But
you're looking dapper today. Sterling gets too much credit.
Yeah, I am actually wearing a shirt with a collar for once.
Yeah.
But thank you. Yeah, I think we inflate his ego a little bit too much.
Yeah, come on.
To be perfectly honest with you. But look, you can't deny the facts. He is a handsome man.
He's a handsome man, but I'll say this. I ran our names through some anagram filters, and you could rearrange the letters in Sterling Holmes to read smelling others. And I think that takes him down a notch. I don't know about you, but
agreed.
Anyway, we're off the rails already. There's a lot of Chief stuff to discuss, and we're talking anagrams. Yeah.
So should we let people know about our special deal?
Yeah, let's do this first, and then we'll dive into all things Chiefs.
Yeah, let's get into it. So, folks, I've got to get the right read. So I almost started talking about beer. Attention Chiefs fans, we have an unbeatable offer for you from Caesars Sportsbook. New customers can get their first bet insured up to $1,250 using our code ARROWFUL while signing up. Not only will your first bet be completely insured, but you'll also be directly supporting this podcast. That's true. Isn't that amazing? So if you haven't already joined Caesars Sportsbook community, now would be the perfect time to make your move. Just remember, enter our code ARROWFUL. That's ARROWFULL during sign up and place that first bet. This offer is only available to new customers who are 21 and older and physically present in a legal gambling state. Please remember to always gamble responsibly. Please check the episode description for the full terms of the offer. And if you already have a Caesars account, you can find out more great deals that we have with other books at arrowheadaddict.com/bets. For more betting offers and ways to support the podcast. Appreciate you all so much for your support.
Well done.
How'd I do?
My friend. You did good.
Somebody was highlighting it while I was reading it. It was disorienting.
Yeah.
And I stuck to the script.
You stuck to the script. You did good. So let's talk some Chiefs here. It was a busy day, busy day, frenzied day. But to catch people up, we all know the 90-man roster runs 9. You have a 90-man off-season roster. Then today, by 4 p.m. at the league office, which is on Eastern time, every team had to get down to at least 53-man roster, which they'll carry into the regular season. Now, there still will be a bit of shifting back and forth there because there's some maneuvering, some manipulation that teams have to do with maybe injured guys. So for some of you, if you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they cut that veteran, for example, they could re-sign that veteran tomorrow. They just had to carry every team maybe has to carry an injured guy through today in order to place them on injured reserve, with the chance to bring them back, right?
Yeah.
So we'll dive into all the minutia. What does this mean? If you're here, if you're curious about Chris Jones and our thoughts there, we'll get to those eventually. But on this episode, really, we wanted to break down the Chiefs roster moves. And honestly, the questions start at quarterback. I mean, they start at the very top. So we're just going to march through this position by position and give our take on this. Patrick, starting at quarterback, that was like the big battle was Steve Buechele, Blaine Gabbert. Normally we gloss over quarterback when we discuss the Chiefs because we're like, oh yeah, you know, what's the mystery here, right?
Yeah.
But like, what were you expecting to happen here versus what actually happened? Which is, by the way, in case people don't know, the fact that Shane Buechele was cut today, and you know, yeah. So yeah, we'll leave it at that. So Buechele was cut. A lot of Kuhn was cut. But yeah, what do you make of that? What were you expecting?
Well, first of all, a second ago, the first time you mentioned him, you called him Steve Buechele, which is
An
maybe
old
like
Rangers third baseman.
he's or it could be like a combo of Steve Buscemi and Shane Buechele, two talented guys. Look,
Yeah.
I was a little surprised by this one. I mean, I'm not like gobsmacked or anything, but the Chiefs have invested quite a bit of time and effort and a little bit of money into Shane Buechele, and he had some nice moments in the preseason. Not a great finale there, but I don't necessarily blame him for all of that. So I was surprised that they didn't keep him on the roster. To be perfectly honest with you, I thought they would carry 3. I didn't think Blaine Gabbert was going to get cut. I think they probably would have wanted Blaine Gabbert to continue to be their quarterback, their backup quarterback in an emergency situation. He's a veteran, a little more experienced, a little more trustworthy. I would have thought if they had kept all 3 of them, if something catastrophic happened, and I don't even want to mention it, but if Patrick Mahomes were to be lost for the season for whatever reason, he got abducted by aliens because we know he's indestructible, he can't get hurt. Say Mahomes gets abducted by aliens, then in that situation, the Chiefs might say, well, we're going to go with Buechele because there's no chance of Mahomes coming back. We want to get some good run out of this guy. Maybe we can trade him. He can be our long-term backup. But you keep that veteran around in case Mahomes has to leave for a half or a game for something minor. So I'm a little bit surprised that they cut him, but maybe they just felt like he hadn't gotten to where they wanted him to be, and they like other guys on the roster more. And I think sometimes we get caught up as fans and, oh, well, you know, this guy's been around and they've got to keep him and positioned him. We want to have at least 3 quarterbacks, but I do think they try as much as they can to look at the roster and say, who are the best guys? And if we can, we want to find a way to keep the most talented guys. And if that meant keeping 10 offensive linemen versus 3 quarterbacks, they probably feel like, look, if we need another quarterback, we can get somebody on par with Shane Buechele later.
Yeah. Here's the interesting thing here, the wrinkle. Remember this, the NFL added a rule this year saying that you could carry a 3rd quarterback on the active roster and activate him without having to put him among your actives. So like normally a team has 53 spots. You go into a game with 46 active spots. But if the Chiefs were rolling with Shane Buechele, they could actually insert him into a game without having to include him on the active list. That makes a inactive spot with a quarterback more valuable than normal. So here's what this tells me, that as much as they like Shane Buechele, plus the boost of having him available potentially as an inactive, was still not enough to get him over the hump compared to a roster spot for someone else. What that tells us is, as much as we may like Shane Buechele, the Chiefs decided, just like what you said, something there was not clicking, because now he is subject to waiver claims. I mean, he's not a veteran who gets released and then he's still going to be an RFA even next year. So any team could claim him. And remember, the Arizona Cardinals tried to do that back in 2021. So, you know, it wouldn't surprise me to see another team say, hey, he's looked pretty good. He's been with Andy Reid for a couple of years. Let's let's give him a shot there.
And maybe sometimes, and look, these are NFL teams. There's a lot of money at stake. These aren't charities, but sometimes they will do a solid for somebody. And maybe they felt like, hey, look, like, this guy, he's young. Maybe he's not the best fit for us. Let's cut him loose and see if he has a chance to catch on with somebody else. And they can always bring him back if he doesn't.
Yeah.
If he doesn't land on somebody else, they can put him on the practice squad and call him up if the interest isn't there from another one of these teams. The Cardinals may not want to touch him right now because they just seem like dead set on losing him as many games as possible, and he might be a little bit too good for them. So these things happen, and there's as you mentioned, and it's something important to keep in mind today. This is not over.
Yeah,
there are guys getting cut from other teams, contracts being figured out. Obviously, the Chiefs still have their thing with Chris Jones. Some of these guys who are on the roster right now, unfortunately for them, it's just like a stay of execution. I mean, there's one person right now we know whenever Chris Jones, if he ever comes back, someone's gone. Someone's getting cut. So whoever's that last man on the roster right now, there's probably a few more moves to come.
Sure. Let's switch gears here. We're looking at running back. And again, what you thought might be, a position with little drama turn into, honestly, I'm thrilled with it. I know this is probably going to go against the grain. I said this morning on Twitter, if I was the GM, I'd walk into that. What I said was I would keep McKinnon, I would keep Pacheco, and then I would lose the entire rest of the position. I wouldn't care at all. What the Chiefs ended up doing was keeping those two guys along with Clyde. And then we watched Pirine and Prince left off the roster in the end. It looked like in the first half of the preseason that Deneric Prince had played his way onto the roster. In the second half of the preseason, it looked like Pirine had moved into his position. Turns out none of them were really good enough to win a job there. What do you make of that? Do you think we see those guys back, or do you think, maybe some new blood?
I think it's similar to the situation with Buechele, where look at the running back position, so Buechele, right? He's a backup quarterback to Patrick Mahomes. Where the Chiefs are with the quarterback position right now is they do not need to cling to young guys. Their quarterback position is set for the foreseeable future. At running back, the NFL has decided, look, these guys, most of them just aren't that special. They're all incredibly athletic, but they have a very short shelf life. They're not worth paying a ton of money for, and they're not worth giving up a bunch of resources for, except in very rare circumstances. And even then, it might blow up in your face.
Yeah.
Another thing I think is important to remember is that what we see in preseason games, while it's illuminating for us, the Chiefs have been practicing with these guys for a month. They know everything about them. They know more about them than we do. There's a reason why guys like LaMichael Pirine and Deneric Prince are just out there floating around to where there's always a reason, right? Justin Ross made the team, but we know that he was an incredibly talented, high upside, potential first round type of player when he was in college. And there were other reasons why he was able to land on the Chiefs in the way that he did. And I think, again, the Chiefs are looking at the roster, and maybe they like Pirine. They think he's a really good player. But they probably have 10 other guys on speed dial that they think can do what Michael Pirine can do for them if they need him. And if they're looking at their roster and they're like, boy, we sure are thin at defensive tackle. Offensive line is the most important thing to this team in terms of winning because we have to protect Patrick Mahomes. So we want to have as much depth as possible there. Looking at the running back position, it's easy to replace. I'm sorry, but it is, especially for this team in this offense.
Yeah. I was a little surprised that they only went with 3. Were you surprised that one of those 3 was Clyde?
No, they owe him a bunch of money. So, and again, he knows the offense. They know him. He's got very good ball security. I always feel bad for Clyde because I just think people are so shitty to him because of something that's just not his fault at all, which is where he was drafted. That's on the front office and the Chiefs. If you got him in the 4th round, you'd be thrilled. He's a fine running back. He's averaged well over 4 yards per carry for most of his career. He's had injury issues. I've got, his vision doesn't seem to be the best at times, right? But like most of the frustration directed towards him comes because of where he was drafted, and that's not his fault. There's no reason to cut. He is a quality. There's also a reason, even if maybe it was a little bit of a mistake, why he was going, like he went at the end of the first round. He would have been drafted, in the first 3 rounds. He's talented. So no, don't why? Just ride out the contract. You didn't pick up his option. There's no reason to cut somebody like that when you're going to owe him a bunch of money anyway.
Yeah. Do you think, if you had to make a prediction, will we see 0, 1, or 2 of these guys back on the practice squad?
I mean, it really comes down to the other teams and where they're at. P. Ryan put some good tape together. So I wouldn't be surprised if somebody snagged him and wanted them on their roster as a depth piece. Prince, I could see coming back. But yeah, either one of them. I think the Chiefs like them. And if you're only going to carry 3 running backs on your active roster, you're going to have somebody on the practice squad at that position. So maybe both of them return.
I saw the Denver Broncos released Tyler Beatty. So Mizzou fans may want to, see him out of more local context. He was a 6th round pick, so that could be pretty fun. But yeah, I'm with you. These things really don't move the meter so much. They're exciting in the preseason, but the list of preseason heroes, which we'll talk about this in just a second, like the list of preseason heroes, if we put posters on our wall of those guys versus the guys who like really end up on the roster, we'd probably be pretty surprised at what our room looks like.
Yeah. It's actually, they call it the Bobby Scipio Hall of Fame.
You know what? I need to decorate this room anyway. Maybe I should come up. Maybe I need like a Sylvester Morris poster.
Yeah.
Maybe like a John Baldwin helmet back here.
Get some Junior Ciavi merchandise. This is a great idea, actually. By the way, did you know that Bobby Scipio, he played for like a million teams, like CFL, all these weird football leagues after the Chiefs, and he played for the a team called the Chicago Slaughter. Funny enough, later he went on to get arrested for attempted murder.
He did.
This is on his Wikipedia page. It was his sister's boyfriend, and they like black bagged him and took him to a field and pointed a gun at him and like threatened him. Charges were dropped, so maybe the guy deserved it. I don't know, but interesting story. Another interesting story on September, and this is still Bobby Scipio related. On September 1st, it'll be the anniversary. I think this was 2007 of when the Chiefs cut Bobby Scipio, because they cut him initially and then they brought him back on, and they cut him. Do you know who they cut him for? Can you guess?
No.
They cut him for Tyler Thigpen.
Thiggy.
So it was a watershed moment in Chiefs history.
Man, that's
when they cut Bobby Scipio for Chiefs legend Tyler Thigpen, or as I always referred to him when I ran Arrowhead Addict, Bones.
Bones. Oh man, Bobby! I never knew that much about Bobby Scipio. You're like a walking Scipio Britannica, however that works. Let's talk wide receivers. Look, the Kansas City Chiefs, in the history of Andy Reid's time with the franchise, 10 years, have carried 5 and 6 receivers. But for the first time ever, the Chiefs are allowing 7 wide receivers. This is known as the Justin Ross clause. They're lining up 7 receivers deep on the active roster. First of all, Justin Ross making it. Are you glad to see it? Would you have made the same move?
I mean, based on everything I've seen of the kid, absolutely. And I'm sure they obviously saw a lot more. He has a rare athleticism, and the size that he brings to the table. MVS has that size, but I mean, you saw it in the preseason game with the touchdown pass that Ross caught, where he went up high and went and got it. You don't really see a lot of that from MVS or really anybody on the Chiefs. They had Jody Fortson, but he looked a little bit like, I mean, you watch that clip and you're like, was that Jamar Chase? Like, if you squint, it's a similar sort of ability. So I'm not saying he's going to be Jamar Chase, but what I'm saying is he is extremely talented, and he's something that the Chiefs don't quite have. I don't know how this is going to shake out when they is he going to be active? Who's not? Do you think they're going to carry 7 guys on game day?
No, I can't imagine they're going to carry 7 guys on game day. I think the first question they have to answer is Kadarius Toney going to really be healthy, or are they mincing words, not telling it, and he's going to end up on IR, or at the very least just an unhealthy scratch until he is okay?
Yeah.
At the point that he is okay, then you have some real decisions to make, because who's gonna sit? Fans are going to want to sit Justin Watson, but Justin Watson does so many things well that the coaching staff, the coaching staff's given him starters reps, right? I mean, we're looking at like a 3 receiver set. You're looking at what Tony, Watson, and Sky, right? I mean, I think those are the 3 guys out there. Then Richie James may work into the slot on occasion, and is Ross. Like, Ross cleared the first hurdle, but people are going to assume now that they're going to see Ross on game days in the end zone. And that's not there yet, at least that we know of, until it is. So I think, people could be let down in the first week if Ross isn't trotted out there like like he's a starting guy. So he cleared the first hurdle. Kudos to him, but it's not all the way yet. Like, the Ross story is not like all the way where people want it to be, and it does create some real, is he just going to be a healthy scratch for the foreseeable future? I don't know. How do you think it shakes out with those guys?
It's tricky because we know the reason why Watson is here is because of special teams. So if it wasn't because if he didn't play special teams, he wouldn't be on the roster. So that kind of rules him out for being inactive, probably on game day. And you're probably not, I don't think they're going to use him a ton. I think they like to rotate him into that MVS spot. He's got a similar skill set to MVS. So when you look at this, after the way that Richie James played, I could see, who sits? Richie James? Maybe. But
is Rice sitting out as a 2nd round pick?
It's because they've been so high on him, and they used him a lot in the preseason. I really don't know. I don't see how they can have them all active, but it seemed like in the preseason, when they had the ones out there, I think they've got all these packages, and they're looking for mismatches. And so they can go out there if they want to, and they can be all right, we're going to roll out, MVS, and they can be like an NBA team, and they can go big or they can go small and fast, so maybe they've got some sort of crazy scheme cooked up where they are going to have all those guys active because they play special teams, because it gives them mismatches, and because they only have 3 running backs, and because they don't have a fullback, and they didn't keep, they only kept 3 tight ends, right? We're going to get to that.
They only kept 3 tight ends. So
yeah.
So they only kept 2 quarterbacks when they expected 3. They only kept 3 running backs when you expected 4. They only kept 3 tight ends when you expected 4. And there's no fullback. That's 4 slots there created by some offensive restraint that they're going to use in other places. That's not to say that those positions won't be filled by maybe a new signing, a veteran, a guy coming back in some way. But as of Tuesday's deadline, that's what they decided to create. I'll say this though, on the downside, when you go with a bunch of guys who can do one thing well as receivers, when you refuse to get a total package, when you don't re-sign Tyreek, when you don't trade for T. Higgins, when you don't grab a 1st round guy, now we're seeing the effects of that. You got to carry 7, because the complete guys you do have are now injury risks in Ross and Tony, and the incomplete guys who do certain things well now carry different roster spots. And now you're having to carry 7 when maybe you'd only have to carry 5 if 1 or 2 of these guys were what you'd call very well-rounded and reliable wide receivers. That's what now the Chiefs are having to do to adjust to their, like, whatever their mantra is now for their acquisition of wide receivers. The way this is fallen in, that's the price they're paying as roster spots.
Yeah. Yeah. Jacob says we sound dumb because Watson did not play a lot of special teams. They literally put him back that are field kicks, man, punts last year when Sky Moore couldn't hold on to the ball. So you have to have a lot of trust in somebody to put him back there to do that.
I do wonder about returner though, right? Because here's the one thing we didn't talk about. We didn't talk Emir Smith-Marsette, right?
Right.
Who they traded Smith-Marsette for a 2025, by the way, 2025, and then conditional swap of 7th round picks. So that's about as, that's basically saying, I'll take something, anything. Give me, that's Brett Veach on the phone with Carolina's GM going, I will take anything at this point. Just give me any return for Smith-Marsette. So some people really didn't like that for the Chiefs because obviously you have some return option there. But between Prince, Smith-Marsette, and Richie James, you had returner. Now you just have James. That's it. That's your go-to on both sides. So, it'll be interesting to see do you think James takes over both roles there? I guess you've had Pacheco in that role before.
Right. And they had like Prince returning kicks and James is the punt guy. They seem to switch it up. I think they might like running backs in that kick returner role and receivers in that punt returner role. But the Amir Smith-Marsette thing, that's just a great win, in my opinion, for the Chiefs. This is a guy who you were going to cut.
Yeah.
And you get a little bit of value from, like, the Panthers aren't going to be very good, bearing any sort of incredible surprise. So, you're probably moving from the back of the 7th round to maybe the front. And for a guy that you picked up to be a camp guy and he turned out to be kind of talented, that's a win. Good for the Chiefs and good for him because, like,
yes.
I want to echo this with the conversation about Generic Prince and LaMichael Pirine. As much as, like, we were excited by those guys and some of the things they did, and it might have been nice to see them on the roster, those guys weren't going to play even if they did make the roster. Like, if LaMichael Pirine made the roster, he's not getting in there. Now, you can make your argument about depth, that running backs get hurt. Something could happen to, anybody. McKinnon, and then do you want Pirine back there and catch the ball a little bit? Sure. That would be great. But they know the personnel that's out there, right? It's not like they cut these guys and they're like, yeah, we'll figure out running back later. Like, if those guys get scooped up, Brett Veach has got a list. They have a list they've got their power rankings for positions, guys that are available, guys they might trade for. Like this, they get paid millions of dollars to be on top of this shit and have backup plans for their backup plans. So, it doesn't mean they're always right, but these guys probably weren't going to play. Smith-Marsette had no shot of cracking this lineup. So now maybe he goes to Carolina and he becomes a guy, and that would be maybe a little painful for us Chiefs fans, but it should only be really painful if the 7 guys they put on the roster ahead of him are all so bad that you're like, God, why don't we keep Smith-Marsette?
Yeah, you're totally right. And look, for anyone who wanted to I don't want to take anything away from Smith-Marsette because he looked good, but the truth is, in 2021, it was Doris Fountain who had everyone going, well, who is this? He led the team in receiving. In 2020, there was no preseason due to COVID. But in 2019, there was a kid named Cody Thompson who did the same thing, led the Chiefs in receiving yards, and everyone was like, who's Cody Thompson? 4 years later, now you're going, wait, who's Cody Thompson? So, let's not pretend that these normally turn out really well. That's why the Panthers didn't give up anything else, or there was no market there for demand to even drive that price up. So, the Panthers take a flyer for nothing on a guy who showed something. And if it doesn't work out, then they're out nothing anyway. So I think it works out for everyone. I think you're right. Remember, Carolina's got a nice young, they got Bryce Young, and is the number one quarterback there. And then they shipped off DJ Moore to the Bears. So you've got room there. You've got DJ Shark. They drafted Jonathan Mingo. Terrace Marshall's out with a back injury right now. And then you have like Laviska Shenault, a few others. There's room there for Smith-Marsette to make his mark on special teams and wide receivers. So
yeah, someone's always willing to give him a look.
Yeah, I like it. Let's talk tight end, because you mentioned the fact that we normally expect 4. We only got 3. That's Matt Bushman was left out. Is that surprising to you? Not surprising. Would you have liked to see it?
I didn't see enough from him. Like, just I like some of his blocking reps that I saw in the preseason. Actually, I know he made sort of a splash a couple years ago, catching some passes. So that's what I liked when I saw him out there squaring up really well and moving guys around. But again, they like Jody Fortson. He's on IR. Is he going to be somebody that gets scooped up? I don't know. It's strange to me they ran so much like 12 personnel last year that I'm surprised that they only have 3 tight ends, but they must have a plan for that. And maybe they think, they've got a feel for these guys. Like, I know it feels like everybody that gets cut is going to get scooped up by some other team on waivers, but generally that doesn't really happen. There's a few guys that are really interesting and teams will take, but they don't know as much about these guys as the Chiefs do. And there's a reason why you see guys hang around for the Chiefs preseason after preseason after preseason. It's because nobody else wants them, but the Chiefs know enough about them that they kind of want to see how it goes. So he might just be right back on the practice squad.
Yeah. I think we'll see him on the practice squad. And I also think Bushman's going to be active for a few games this year. I could totally see him, sort of climbing the depth chart. He did it with the Raiders before. He was doing it last year before he broke his clavicle. I like his hands. I think he's going to be. I think he could be somebody. More importantly to me is seeing what Noah Gray is going to turn into this year in this hybrid role that they're asking him to play. I like his trajectory, and I think he's going to be. I think he's going to be an exciting player behind Kelsey. So, yeah. But look, let's move on here. We got a lot more positions to cover. Look, the offensive line. No one's surprised there. The starting 5 remain the starting 5. And then you have some surprises. Look, Lucas Niang, tackle, is backing up Juwan Taylor and Donovan Smith, who are tackles. And then you have Wanye Morris, tackle, who's stuck. And then you have Prince Tega Winogo, tackle. 5 tackles taking up roster spots here. And then in addition, you have Nick Allegretti, and then they carried Mike Caliendo, which knocks Darian Kennard off the list. He was waived. So that's last year's 5th round pick, is now available out there for another team to claim. And then maybe there were some other guys that people wanted to see out there. Were you surprised by how offensive line shook out?
I was a little bit surprised by Kennard. I thought they would hang on to him for another year, but I actually think it's probably a nod to Wanongho and how much they like what he brings to the table. And he's been hanging around, and they kept 10. So, Caliendo, I wasn't sure if they're going to keep Caliendo, but they obviously like him. Other than that, I wasn't surprised. Allegretti, I knew was going to be a lock, versatile for them, been around for a while. So, to me, I was thinking Kennard would make it, and I was trying to I thought they're going to keep 9, and I was like, is it going to be Wanongho or Niang? And I thought this would be it for Niang, just because he hasn't really panned out. But they obviously still like what they see there.
Yeah, I think we can forget that Niang immediately grabbed a starting spot when he was with this team.
Yeah.
And then even after he was injured the first time, he returned to reclaim a starting role. And so, it's not talent, it's health. And of course, then health affects your talent. I mean, if your, injury could lower that ceiling, and he's not starting now, and the Chiefs went out and grabbed 2 new starting tackles and drafted another. So that tells you what they thought of the position this offseason. But it's interesting to see the way that shakes out. Caliendo might have been saved by Nick Allegretti's shoulder. Remember, Nick Allegretti's dealing with a shoulder injury that's kept him out of practice, several practices in a row. And Caliendo has years of starting experience, both at center and guard at Western Michigan. So maybe his experience along the interior versus like Darian Kennard, they're trying to move him there, but he's never lined up at center and in a meaningful game. So so Caliendo is the big surprise there. Let's shift gears to the defensive line. Look, we're without Chris Jones. The whole line is kind of a mess. At least the interior of the line is kind of a mess. Jones is out. Turk Wharton is having a hard time staying healthy in his return from a serious leg injury dating back to week 5 against the Raiders last year when he was lost. And then also, without like Carlos Dunlap coming back, in that way, we've got some missing players, and Charles Omenihu is going to sit for the first third of the year as well. He's a guy who can even slide inside. So they've kept Matt Dickerson here. You got to assume he's the one to go if Chris Jones comes back. When you look overall at the state of the defensive line, though, we could start on the edge or just talk about it overall, but I'd love your sort of initial thoughts.
Well, I was a little surprised they cut Wise because they were rotating him in with the first team and he flashed some plays. But again, this is where it's important for us to remember, like what we see in preseason is a very small sample size of what the Chiefs have seen.
Yeah.
So just because somebody maybe looks good in a few snaps against another backup doesn't mean that they couldn't be a huge liability if they actually played against starters. So I'm concerned about this group. My guess for what they think is that they're going to be able to get really exotic. And I think, like they like Noddy. And I think they feel like they'll be okay with the run defense, particularly because they have Bolton back there behind them. I think they're hoping that if they don't have Chris Jones or limited Chris Jones, that they think they can get exotic with their blitzes and blitzing their linebackers and blitzing their corners and manufacturing sacks, which frankly is something that they've been good at. They haven't always just been brilliant, like drop everybody back and rush forward and just rack up the sacks. That's not how they've been getting a lot of their sacks. So that's what Spags likes to do. They brought in Drew Tranquil, and you saw it in a preseason game, them using him as a blitzer. They like to use Willie Gay Jr. as a blitzer. They like to use L'Jarius Sneed. So maybe their plan here is we'll be okay because we can get exotic and we're multiple and we can do a lot of different things.
Yeah. Hey, I'm seeing some comments here about Neil Farrell, and we didn't go over that. About 4 hours ago, actually, the Chiefs shipped a 6th-round choice to the Las Vegas Raiders, a rare intra-division trade. And they got back Neil Farrell. I loved this deal. I love this deal because a few reasons. One, they ship a 6th-round pick for last year was a 4th-round pick. The Raiders invested a 4th in Neil Farrell. LSU kid comes out. He's 330. He's huge. I mean, he's a mammoth player. He's also 6'4", so he's got some length to interrupt the passing lanes as well. He's a quick strike. He had 45 tackles in the defensive interior for LSU in 12 games. Didn't even play the bowl game. So he can make the tackles and wrap up real quickly in the run game. He's big. He comes with 3 more years of cost control. Like, that's what's so smart about this. Yes, the Chiefs traded a draft pick, but it's like they basically drafted Farrell too in last year's draft at a position where there's very little young talent. Like the Chiefs had Phil Hoskins. The Chiefs have relied on a ton of journeymen. Daniel Wise, Phil Hoskins, Matt Dickerson, Chris Williams, all those guys were in camp for the Chiefs, and they were all like veteran journeymen from other teams.
Yeah.
Now they draft Keandre Coburn from Texas this year. Then now they trade for Neil Farrell, a big thick lineman. Farrell's got some real stamina issues. It would have been great to have him before camp because Andy Reid would have run him all over the place. You got to think he's going to lose pretty significant weight, honestly, if he's going to suit up for the Chiefs on the regular. But remember how I'll say this. Did you see how Danny Shelton looked this year compared to last year? Like that guy was like svelte. I mean, he just looked, he looked like, I don't know, like he was getting married and he was like losing weight to fit into the suit for the sake of picture. He looked great.
Yeah.
So I think a big guy like that, when he's with the Chiefs for a while, is going to learn how to lose some of that extra padding while still retaining a big core to be that great run defender. Derek Notty's a series of 1-year signings. Farrell and Coburn now give you 2 guys through 2025, at least, to give you some of that run defense. I thought it was a great deal, and I think he can help this year too.
Yeah, and you work on them, right? It doesn't have to be. It's very in vogue, and we saw this with the Eagles last year, just like rotating defensive linemen in and keeping those guys fresh. And I think teams have gotten a little bit smarter about that and been like, why are we if you don't have Reggie White out there, like what, it's hard. Like, have you ever wrestled or done, I didn't play football, but it's a totally different story than when you're out there and you're running sprints as a wide receiver and you're winded and you're in good cardiovascular shape, but you're just basically getting shoved at the line. These guys they're giving everything it's exhausting. I get exhausted just watching them do it. So having a rotation, having a guy you can bring in, sub out, I think it keeps everybody more fresh throughout the course of the game. Those offensive linemen, though, they don't sub out very much. They're usually there the whole time. So, why not hit them with another big, strong guy who didn't just go up against them on the last rep? I like it. I think it's smart, and you never know what you might find. Chiefs haven't been great when it comes to their defensive lineman stuff. They've been better at other positions, so maybe they're trying to turn that around.
Yeah. I will say this too. I just saw the Eagles on their final submission for the roster cuts. They kept 7 defensive tackles. 7.
Yeah.
So if you thought they were rotating a ton of guys before, it's like they're preparing like one of those t-shirt cannons of defensive linemen to just like shoot them out like in some sort of repetitive way. It could be the new way of doing things if winning teams are going with such large rotations, almost like hockey lines that come in and out.
Yeah.
Hey, at linebacker, the Chiefs kept 6 guys. 6. I found this the most shocking of all things on the roster, that they kept the 4 that we know, Bolton, Gay, Tranquil, Chenal. And then they also kept Cochran, which we kind of knew they would do, Jack Cochran at number 5. And then Cam Jones at 6. Are you surprised by keeping 6?
Well, thinking about what I just said, maybe not. If they think they're going to need to muster up some extra pass rush with some guys, and they think they're a little bit weak along the defensive line, but stronger at linebacker, that might have been part of the calculus there. Jones, I don't know enough about. I haven't seen enough to have like a really educated opinion on what he brings to the table, but the Chiefs do. And so I was definitely surprised that they kept 6, but I think it may make sense when they're trying to, again, as we just talked about, maybe rotate guys through, find certain matchups and use guys in certain situations, especially because they knew they weren't going to have Omenihu. Like when they signed him, even then they knew he was getting suspended. They probably were hoping he was just going to get suspended for 4 games. Turned out to be 6. And then they thought that this Chris Jones thing was going to be resolved. And now they don't know. Like they don't know when that's going to be resolved. So those are 2 major players for your pass rush that one definitely won't be available and the other one may not be available. So smart to keep guys that they think might be able to help impact there and keep other guys fresh.
Do you think they wish they would have appealed the Omenihu suspension to make him available early on? Or do you think like, let's just get this all out of the way and
I don't know the ins and outs of the appeal process. If they had done that, would it have lingered into the season? So then he can play a game or two, which that at first it seems great until you're getting into the meatier schedule. And if you look at the Chiefs schedule, the front end is a lot more friendly than the back end. The back end is when it really gets tough, and they take the Eagles again, the Bills, the Bengals. So they may have just been like, we knew that this was going to be the deal and we're fine with it. And let's just start the clock so that we have them for the second half of the year. And really for a team like the Chiefs, that's when things really start to ramp up.
Yeah. Well, let's look at the secondary. Did the secondary end up shaping up after roster cuts the way that you thought it might? Like, how were your predictions? Were they on or off?
Yeah, it was pretty much dead on. I had a feeling that they would go with 5. These are the 5 that I figured that they would go with. I know there were some, they like to have a lot of cornerbacks. And there were some people that I know a lot of fans had camp crushes on, but at the end of the day, this is far and away probably your best group.
Yeah, they're young, they're deep. I was a little surprised that they dropped Deion Bush and didn't have room for him. But at the same time, there are a ton of good safeties on this team.
Right.
And like we mentioned earlier at the beginning of the show, Bush is a guy you can actually bring back as a free agent if you end up cutting a guy. So, it'll be interesting. I wonder if Nick Jones goes on injured reserve with some fractured fingers, and then maybe Bush comes back in that capacity. I don't know.
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, obviously, Connor was a big impacted Bush's situation as well. So they're trying to keep things constantly moving there. I mean, that's what you do when you're a team like the Chiefs, right? Your 2 best friends when it comes to the player types are rookies, young, cost-controlled guys, and competent, cheap veterans who, maybe do one thing really well and you can bring them in. They're great run support at the safety position, but they can't cover for shit, so those are the guys you need to have while you're trying to find your young, well-rounded guys that you can have out there all the time. So it makes sense with the way the Chiefs keep churning through DBs like they do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm with you folks. By the way, we've had a ton of comments. It's been interesting to read several of them and just so appreciate anyone who's like watching the show, hanging with us. On a day like today, it's a lot of fun to kind of go back and forth and see who's happy, who's sad, who's upset. We've even seen some like Brett Veach is the worst, even though he's like the general manager of a team that's won 2 of the last 4 Super Bowls. So, there are a lot of opinions fly around here. But we so appreciate you guys hanging out with us. By the way, I want to let you guys know, we got some swag if you're interested. As we're in between things here real fast. We'll get to Chris Jones just a second. But just want to let you know the Arrowhead Addict merch store is live. You can visit it right now by clicking the link in the description below. We've got shirts and beach towels and baby onesies even. So if you're expecting, you could like usher them into the kingdom, into the Chiefs kingdom, Arrowhead Addict. However you say that. I don't know. It's been a long time. It's been a long time since I've had a baby. I don't know.
Get them started early.
That's what I'm trying to say. We also have pint glasses for that game day. Great beer that you're going to be drinking. Anyway, use code ROSTERCUTS, ROSTERCUTS, to get 15% off your order today. That's the promo code for this week's listeners. And make sure to use that fast so it will expire on Sunday. Rep the podcast. We appreciate you hanging out with us. And help us out in that way, if you will. Also, if you're listening, give us a thumbs up on the podcast. Leave a review. We'd love it. If you have, whether you're listening at Apple or any other, however you take in the podcast, we just appreciate any feedback we get. So yeah, as always, thanks for hanging out with us.
Yeah. Ronald said he likes the cap that I was showing. That's for sale in the Arrowhead Addict store.
There it
Go
is.
get it.
Rep that swag. Hey, let me look. Let's turn to Chris Jones, because he's like, it's the void. It's a void in my heart. It's a void on the roster. Like, what do you even know what to make of this right now? Like, I just feel like I'm going. I don't even understand at this point. I don't even understand the stance, really, because there's so much money being lost that I don't quite get the end game with the leverage here, or really the lack of leverage.
Yeah, man. Shout out to Jojo too for the super chat. Appreciate you, man. You don't know how much that means to us, and the way it supports the show. So thank you. Yeah, look, man, it's just, I know how just absolutely furious everybody is. It's just when you've got this team that's on the cusp of a dynasty and coming off a Super Bowl win and all of these really wonderful things, it's frustrating to have any sort of dysfunction from a fan base point of view, right? Like, you're just like, come on, we're not these clowns like the Colts or the Raiders, like we're the Kansas City Chiefs. Like, we're the premier organization in the NFL. Like, these things shouldn't be happening, but like, it's just hard, and it takes two to tango. And I still don't begrudge Chris Jones for doing what he's doing. I never will. It is a personal thing. Your money and your living and your future, and the man can only play football for so long. And like, I duked it out with everybody on Twitter last week. I took on all the arguments about, well, I don't make anything and he makes millions and he should just be grateful. Like, man, if you ever are so lucky to make millions of dollars, you're going to feel differently, right? Your money's your money. What you think you're worth is what you think you're worth. Don't ever begrudge anybody for doing what they think is best for them and their family. And I'm frustrated, but I'm not mad at the Chiefs either. Like, Brett Veach has a lot of things to consider in these negotiations. And it's not just Chris Jones in the next 2 years. Look, he could be in this job for life, right? He could probably do this job for as long as he wants. He's got to think about the next 10 guys he's got to negotiate with. And every piece of leverage that an agent can get, because that's the agent's job, and the agent's thinking about the agent. Hey, man, the Katz brothers, we got an agency here. We're trying to feed our families. We're trying to grow our business. We're trying to attract new clients. We don't want to get, so it's a very complicated, and nobody's really wrong in this situation. When you've negotiated with people, leverage. You hang on to every bit of leverage that you have. And Brett Veach has given out some big contracts in the past, early in his tenure with the Chiefs. And since, the Chiefs have been a bit more frugal, and he's been very much a line in the sand guy. We saw it with Tyreek Hill. We saw it with Orlando Brown Jr. Now we're seeing it with Chris Jones. I don't know where it ends. I know that at a certain point, and maybe the Chiefs know this too, that the leverage flips from Chris Jones, who I think kind of has a little bit of leverage right now, to the Chiefs.
Yep.
Because once those games start getting played, Chris Jones is losing a significant amount of money. And the Chiefs probably figure, as important as Chris Jones, as crucial, I don't even want to say important, he is crucial. He is key to what they want to do on defense to this team. They're looking at it and they're like, there's only one guy, actually two guys, we can't do without. And that's Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. And they figure they can probably win without Chris Jones. And so maybe they want to call his bluff and say, yeah, look, we're fine to go into a few games without you because we think we can still win them. We just won the Super Bowl. You were a big part of that. But let's see if you want to miss all these game checks. And I think that's where I worry as a fan, does it get ugly, right? And we saw this with the situation in Indianapolis with Jonathan Taylor and Jim Israel. Like, does it get ugly? And I haven't been too much worried to this point because we haven't had a Chris Jones going, I want traded. Because that's what happens when the player's fed up and they're like, trade me. I'm not coming. I don't care. I'm so pissed off. Screw you guys. That has not happened. So there's still a chance to I think, to rescue this, but it might have to get a little bit more painful for everybody before it comes to a resolution. And, at this point, if he came back tomorrow, he's probably playing, he's limited snaps, right? I thought he'd be back by now. I really did. Everybody seems to be dug in. You've got the best NFL insiders out there saying there's no resolution in sight. So at this point, the Chiefs are calling Chris Jones bluff. Like if they were going to relent, they would have done it by now, because it hurts the team to a degree, right, for them to do this. So they're probably going to see it through to this point and see if he blinks.
Yeah. One, I'll say this: I appreciate your nuance here, your ability to hold a lot of this in tension. That's hard to do. It's hard to give credibility to every viewpoint in the argument. With anything, we see that with anything these days, and that's true here too. And I'm with you. I don't fault Chris for wanting his. You get your bag, man. Get your bag when you can get it.
Yep.
And I don't fault the Chiefs for having a master plan and trying to stick to it. I guess where I wonder is, I just wonder what advice Jones is getting to take this, like who's advising him how much he could get, and why didn't we know a lot about this negotiation way before training camp? If Chris Jones wants Aaron Donald money, did the Chiefs not know that in the preseason, or back in free agency when they could have maybe traded him or to a team who would give him that, or it all just feels like a lot of things surfaced too late. And then now Jones is holding out, but he really lacks the leverage to see it all the way through. The only way that Chris Jones gets the leverage that he wants, and it was worth it, is if the Chiefs host the Lions and the Lions punch him in the mouth. If that happens, if Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery run for 300 yards down the throats of the Chiefs at Arrowhead and upset them in the opener, the entire crowd at Arrowhead is going to be chanting Chris Jones's name in the stands, and maybe he's made himself some money there. Maybe there's enough pressure.
But it's possible. Our pal Matt Verheeren was on with me on Thursday, and he made a really good point. He said, this is Chris Jones' best chance to get paid right now. He's coming off 15.5 sack season. He was incredible, all pro, win the Super Bowl. He's not going to repeat that this year.
Yeah.
It's just the chances are 1 in a million. It won't mean that he won't play well. It's just really hard to do. That's 15.5 sacks is bananas. So he knows this is a shot, but at the same time, that's where I think the Chiefs know that they have the leverage, because you're at a breaking point. If you come back, if you sit out 3 games, or say he sits out 8 like he threatened, well, guess what? You come back, you better go on one hell of a tear those last 8 games, because now you're a year older. You got another year of tread on your tires. You're 30 before the next season starts. You're not going to get what the Chiefs are offering you. And the same thing happened to Orlando Brown. The Chiefs offered him more money than he got from the Bengals. He wanted to test the market, and it didn't work out for him. So Chris Jones is gambling, but he's not an idiot. He's a very smart guy. He knows he's gambling. We're going to see how the roulette wheel spins on this one, unfortunately, as much as we would rather not.
Yeah, I'm with you. Saw some comments, by the way. Neil Farrell's not a Chris Jones replacement. He is a Derek Nottie enhancement, or backup, nose tackle. So even though they made a move at defensive line, the Chiefs are still missing Chris Jones as much as they were before today. Let's be very clear. There is no player in place to do what Chris Jones can do on this roster, or even a bit part of it. It's just a major void.
And let me add one thing, because I saw somebody in the chat said, hey, he's under contract, you know? And then all of a sudden everybody becomes really like pro worker. Like, yeah, you're under contract. You got a contract. You have an obligation. Listen, couple things. One, they can cut him. That's not a fully guaranteed contract. He'll get some of the money, but they can cut him for any reason. They can just be like, yeah, you know, and if they did, like if he started to stink, all right, and they cut him, I guarantee whoever that was, it was like, he's under contract. People were saying that to me on Twitter, wouldn't come rushing in on a white horse and armor and being like, hang on, Chris Jones had a contract. Right. Yeah, I know he's, he's hurt or whatever, but he stinks. They'd be like, he stinks. Get him out of here. Cut him. Put in the next guy. Number two, he's going to pay to not meet his obligation for that contract. So, like, it's not like he's under contract and he's just sitting at home on the couch and he's getting all his money. Like, he won't get his money. He's going to lose millions of dollars potentially if he sits out. So what we have here is a situation where the players, they're in a union, they negotiate, they don't get everything they want. There's a lot of things that are really shitty for the players in the NFL. The franchise tag is bullshit. It's a monopoly. You can get traded. Like, there are all these things that if, like, can you imagine, like, whatever you guys do out there, if your boss called you up and, like, let's say you live in, I'm in Chicago. They call me up. Hey, Patrick, heads up, man. We traded you to SB Nation and we need you to move to Washington, D.C. You got to be there by the end of the week. Same salary, by the way. Like, it's nuts. These guys do not have, like, yes, they have the chance to make millions of dollars because they're the absolute best at what they do in the world. So they deserve it, but they can just be cut at any time. They don't get all their money. They can be traded. They can't go work where they want to work. They can be franchised. So, like, when you get all, like, fired up and red in the face because they dare to use the slim bit of leverage they have to try to get a few more $1 million before they do get cut and they can't play professional football ever again and they have to go work in insurance or something if they need more money, like, throw those arguments out. Just miss me with the, like, he's set for life and I work at the car dealership and it's bullshit. Well, like, maybe if you were the absolute greatest car salesman in the entire world, you'd be making more money at the car dealership, but you're not. Chris Jones is one of the best defensive tackles in the NFL, maybe the best defensive tackle in the NFL. He has every right to try to get every penny he can. He doesn't owe anybody. He doesn't owe the fans anything. And again, and I know it's coming. Well, I pay his salary because I subscribe to NFL Network. No, you don't. No, you don't, dude. You don't pay Chris Jones' salary. There would be, like, the NFL is not there because of you. Okay? You're there because of the NFL. All right? You weren't there when the NFL started. Neither was anybody else. Okay? These arguments that people come up with they're so small in scope that they can't see beyond, like, their own bias, and it drives me nuts. And again, I'm not Clark Hunt as evil guy. I'm not the Chiefs. Like, that's not me. But, like, it's rant over, but, like, just try to have some perspective, and trust me, you would do the same thing. Sure. You would do the same thing these guys do. They're not different than you. Most of them come from very similar backgrounds to the rest of us. They weren't born into money, right? They've worked very hard to get where they are. So, all right, I'm done. Apologies. Thank you.
All good, man. All good. I do hope that we see Chris Jones this week. My hope is this week he will report, find a way to make peace. I think everyone in Kansas City would love to see him back. I think his teammates would welcome him back with open arms. The Chiefs have maintained, yes, when he gets here, we'll be very glad to see him here. So hopefully they've avoided some bad blood and created the least amount of hurdles for him to return as possible. Well, folks, we've arrived at the end of another show. But before we go, our esteemed producer, Richard, should come in the picture here. Richard, can I summon you? Are you there?
You just did. Congratulations, Matt. It worked every time.
Folks, we end every show with what we call the must list. This is when we recommend something to you as a service. It's not really a service. You guys tell us about things you love, and we love sharing things we love. And by the way, you can even do so in our Discord. If you're a member of the channel, hang out in the Discord, hang out with us. Tell us what you love there all the time. People are sharing about their favorite movies and books and other podcasts and favorite Chiefs players and so much. So anyway, we end every show with the must list. And Richard, you want to start us off, man? What's on your must list for this week?
All right. Firstly, I want to offer a correction. Last week, I had like a brain fart. I tried to recommend Talk to Me. I said Let Me In, which is the remake of Let the Right One In. That's a good movie too. But I just want to make a quick correction there. We're August 29th now. Let's move forward. I'm going to recommend a band that I've been enjoying for the last few years, and they're going to be a little relevant in November, by the name of Anna Mana Gucci. This is Matt's already shaking his head. This is a chiptune bit pop band. If for anyone who's not into that genre, it's basically just musicians making original compositions using the sound chips from old arcade games, video consoles, and making music using video game music, basically.
Oh.
So Anna Monoguchi is a 4-piece band from New York. They play a lot of their instruments live. So they are, 2 guitarists, a bass, and a drummer. They rock really hard. I saw them last year on 420. Very good show. And they're an amazing band, and they're going to be kind of relevant in November. They're going to be doing the soundtrack to the Scott Pilgrim TV show. They did the soundtrack to the game previously. They rule. Check them out. Their last album before was USA. It's an otherworldly album. It rules. Check out Anna Monoguchi. That is ANAMANAGUCHI.
Nice.
Is that like you take the noise from like when Mario goes down a pipe, like
sure, whatever you want. You take the sound font from a game, from any game you want that you have a nostalgic feeling for, and you make music. You make new music using the old sounds that those old artists had to kind of work within the constructs of. So it's pretty cool. Check out Anna Monoguchi.
Nice.
Patrick, you're our guest today. Are you really our guest? You're our normal Thursday host. You've just been relocated for a week. I don't know.
It's fun. I like not being the host of the show.
All right. Well, you're our guest then.
Getting to be the guest and get riff and not have to worry about the flow. It's nice.
Yeah. What do you? Did you bring something to the table for this potluck known as the must list?
I did. Very excited to be on the must list. So I went with a favorite film of mine. You guys know I'm a big horror movie guy, big Halloween guy. And there's a movie called The Final Girls, which came out a while back. Got some actors. It is not scary. It's a comedy horror spoof, right? Okay. What I really love about this movie and why I own it, and I own very few movies, and why I watch it frequently, is because a lot of movies, horror movies in particular, aren't about anything really, or if they ever were about something, by the time they get through the cutting process of executives and all that crap, there's nothing left. There's no heart left. And horror spoofs or horror comedies are even worse. They're even worse offenders in this way because they're just trying to make everybody laugh, and they don't care about the story being about anything or having actually like real rich characters. In fact, they're often so silly that they're caricatures. You guys know me, my background's in theater. I'm an actor. Like, I'm really drawn to work that actually is about something. And I find it's much more impactful, whether it's funny, whether it's dramatic, if you can relate to characters. And that's why like dark comedies, for example, I think are so impactful, because I think when we can laugh with or at people, we find them to be much more human. And so then if drama is introduced to that story, it can be very affecting. The Final Girls is a story about, and this isn't really a spoiler, it happens in the first 5 minutes of the movie, a young woman whose mother is killed. She's a struggling actress, and she's killed in a car accident. They're in the car together, and her mother is famous for being in this basically Friday the 13th movie in this universe. I forget what the name of the movie's called, but that was like her one big break. And that's what she's known for. And she can't get any more work as an actor because she was in this famous movie and, played like the Virgin or whatever. And essentially what happens is they go on the anniversary of her death. There's a screening of the series, and she goes to it, the daughter, and there's a crazy thing, and they go into the screen and they're in the movie. So she's in there with the character played by her deceased mother, who she misses very much and is still carrying a lot of guilt around. And it's just, that doesn't sound probably particularly funny, but it's a hilarious movie with really incredible performances, super over the top, but it has a heart, and I can't recommend it enough. I absolutely love it. I cry, I'm not ashamed to admit, every time I watch it. And it really got me into the song Betty Davis Eyes by Kim Carnes, which is also fantastic. So you got to check it out. It's terrific. If you're squeamish and stuff like that, don't worry. It's not that kind of movie.
Man. By the way, Chris Jones tweeted Betty Davis Eyes.
He did. That's
Like
why it's been on my brain. It's because of that tweet.
That's funny that goes full circle there.
Yeah. Sorry, I gave a lecture there, but
complete the circuit.
Yeah.
No, it's good to know, man.
It's a good movie. I want to second that. He gave me the spiel years ago at the office, and I ended up watching it. So yeah, check out The Final Girls. Good.
Poor Richard's got to be so glad to not work in the same space on a daily basis.
No, I get more. I would be. I'm at a loss for film recommendations. I wish you would say something I haven't heard yet.
All right. I'll dig one up for you.
Nice. My must list this week. We finished season 4, which is the last season of Barry. Have you guys seen this show?
I haven't gotten to it yet. No.
I've watched. I need to start season 4.
Okay, yeah. In case you don't know, it's an HBO series. Bill Hader from SNL is an assassin, and it's actually it's a comedy. It's kind of a comedy. It's only 30 minutes long episodes, so it's real easy to digest. It's great. Bill Hader's just so good in it. And anyway, we just finished. It is a bananas final season. They wrap it super well. I love it when a series sticks the landing. I love it. It's very hard to do, and they absolutely did it. So if you're a fan of, I don't know, it's even just worth watching the first 1 or 2 just to like see if it's for you. But yeah, if you're looking for something fun to watch that's kind of on the darker side, it's pretty great.
And that's another example of what I was talking about. Like he has something as a comedian in his dramatic performance. We saw this with Adam Sandler and some of the dramatic stuff that he did. Jim Carrey. I think comedians have a real knack for dramatic acting. I think they're able to tap into something.
Yeah.
Great show.
Yeah, I'm with you. Well, folks, we hope we've tapped into something with you all as we chat about the Chiefs and encouraged a few things here on the end. We just appreciate all of you forever hanging out with, listening to, supporting us in any way. You all are just the best. Chiefs are the best. Chiefs fans are certainly the best. And this corner of Chiefs Kingdom is our particular favorite. So just kudos to all of you. On behalf of Richard, our producer, who could talk for himself, but I won't let him right now. Patrick Allen, our guest, who we're just so glad to have. On behalf of Sterling Holmes, who's probably golfing somewhere or combing his hair upwards, however that works. And on behalf of myself, Matt Connor, thank you so much for hanging out with us, and we'll see you soon. Join us tomorrow for Adam Best and the Wacky Wednesday Chiefs podcast. Did I say that right? Is it Wacky Wednesday?
I want to offer a correction. Adam will be streaming Friday at 3:30 Central. He will not be streaming tomorrow. So
never mind.
Schedule change.
Never let me announce what's next. I will tell you the wrong thing. Stay tuned. If you subscribe, you will get all of the prompts that you need for our channel. Anyway, we'll see you next time.